Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are on page 5 of your student journal. And a quick reminder about our colors. We have green means I expect you to write with me, and red means I expect you just to stop and watch. Okay, before we get started in our lesson each day, we are going to do a problem of the day together. And this is just going to be another opportunity where we can keep some of those really important skills fresh and ready for 6th grade. So today what we're going to kind of just remind ourselves about is how to add and subtract decimals. So the first problem I'd like you to do with me is 4 3/10 plus 5 81/100. Okay. Now, what you might remember when you were taught this last year is the most important thing about adding and subtracting decimals is that you must always line up the decimal. So how the problem is set up horizontally, that's not going to work for us. So we're going to need to set it up vertically. Now, it really does not matter which one you put on top. I might just leave it as is and set it up the order that they gave it to me. And remember, you're doing it with me because we're writing in green together. So the most important thing is my decimal is lined up. Now, if for some reason I didn't have a decimal in one of those numbers, I would have had to add one to the end, and we'll see one of those in the next few days. Okay, what I like to do is when I see an empty place value there, an empty spot, I like to add in a 0 just to fill in the spot for me. So what I've done is I kind of have created this imaginary like perfect box where everything has equal placeholders. So then I just add as normal. So 0 plus 1 is 1, 3 plus 8 is 11, 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So my answer is 10 11/100. Okay, I'm going to leave one problem that I would like you to do on your own, and you'll be submitting your answer to your teacher for this problem later. Okay, so we're going to now get started on our actual lesson for the day, ladies and gentlemen, which is not decimals, which is on simplifying fractions. So that is our goal today, is we're going to be simplifying fractions. Okay, so our objective is today I will, and you're going to notice that I'm going to shorten it each day using today I will. It'll just give us a little bit of less or a little less writing to have to do. So today I will use the GCF to simplify fractions. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about GCF in a moment and what simplify fractions are. Let's look at the vocabulary that they've given us. So the first word that they gave us is simplest form. So what does that mean? It says a fraction's numerator and denominator have only one as a common factor. So then they give us an example. Let's talk about what factors are. We're going to use this empty space down here to kind of take some extra notes. So when I think of factor, I always think for some reason of fit in. So factors fit in to another number perfectly. Factors are also the numbers that the real definition for factors are the numbers that are used to multiply to get something. So let's do one together. So if I was thinking of the number 20, what are the factors of 20? How can I get 20? We're always going to start with 1. So 1 times what gives me 20? 20. Then after 1, I'm going to go directly to 2. 2 times what gives me 20? 2 times 10. Then I'm going to go directly to 3. Notice I'm not going to skip any when I'm trying them. 3 times what gives me 20? 3 doesn't work, so I'm going to cross it off. So then I'm going to go to 4. 4 times what gives me 20? 4 times 5. And then I'm going to go directly to 5. And I'm going to stop because I have a repeat. Once you have a repeat, that means you are done and you can stop. Okay, so the factors of 20, the numbers that fit into 20 perfectly are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. Those are the only factors of 20. Let's try one more. Let's try 30. Okay, so remember I said we're going to start with 1 always. So 1 times what equals 30? 1 times 30. 2 times what equals 30? That one's a little tricky, but I know it has to work because 30 is an even number. So I know it must work. So 2 times 15 equals 30. Then I go to 3 because I don't skip any as I'm trying them. 3 times 10 equals 30. 4 times nothing equals 30. 5 times 6 equals 30. And then 6 times, 6 would be a repeat, which means I'm done and can stop. So the factors of 30, or the numbers that fit into 30 perfectly, are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. So when they talked here about simplest form, they said that when a fraction is in its simplest form, the numerator and denominator have only 1 as a common factor. It means that if I looked at the simplest form here, the only one they'd have in common would be 1. Now, what we call that is the GCF. So GCF stands for, and we can add it up here. When we wrote that, we were looking for the greatest common factor. So if I look at 20 and 30, what do they have in common? They both had a 1. They both had a 2. They both had a 5. And they both had a 10. So those are their common factors, but their greatest common factor is a 10. So the greatest common factor equaled 10. So that's what we want to find when we are going to be simplifying fractions, is that greatest common factor. Okay, our vocabulary also talks about a prime number. And a prime number says a number that has exactly 2 factors, 1 and itself. And they give us an example of 5. If I was to do a factor table for 5, I would only get 1 times 5, because 2 wouldn't work, 3 wouldn't work, and 4 wouldn't work. And then they give us some other prime numbers where they're only going to have 2 factors. Notice how many factors 20 and 30 had. Then it says a composite number is a number that has more than 2 factors. So 20 and 30 were both good examples of composite numbers because they had lots of factors. We're not going to worry about benchmark fractions today, but we are going to look at equivalent. This is going to be a big thing because when you simplify, you're not changing the value of the fraction, you're actually just making an equivalent fraction that is simpler to look at. Okay, so let's actually get started. I am going to be grabbing my red pen, which means you may set down. Oh, I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. Let's actually go right back up to our steps really quick first. So these are the steps you're going to see me follow. I'm going to find a common factor. Now, when I go to find my common factor, I'm going to use the tables, but I don't need to do it for everything. I'm just going to do a table for the numerator. You're going to see me just make a table for the numerator. And then I'm going to show you kind of how I find the greatest common factor. Now, you can use any common factor, but if you simplify with the greatest common factor, you'll only have to simplify 1 time. So sometimes that's a faster method to try and find the greatest common factor. Then I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by the common factor. And then I'm going to write an equivalent fraction in simplest form. Because remember, the fraction still has the same value. Okay, so I'm going to get started, ladies and gentlemen. Here's my first problem. Now, you don't have this problem in your book. I only have this. So I have my red pen, and you are just going to sit back and watch. So my directions say to simplify the fractions. My first fraction is 21 over 56. The numerator is my 21. The denominator is my 56. So it's 21/56 is how I would probably say it. Okay, so if I look at my steps, it says I'm going to find a common factor. I'm going to make a table for the numerator. So I'm going to think of 21 and think of my factors for 21. So for 21, I'm going to always start with 1. 1 times 21. 2 times, I know 2 won't work because this isn't an even number. 3 times 7, 4 times, if 2 didn't work, 4 won't work. 5 times nothing, 6 times nothing, and 7 is a repeat, so I can stop. Okay, so my factors of 21 are 1, 3, 7, and 21. Those are my factors. Okay, so I want to figure out which of those will work for 56. Now, 21's kind of a hard one because I want to see how many, I want to find the largest one that works for 56. So I'm going to start with my largest factor, which is 21. I know 21 won't work because 2 21s would be 42 and 3 21s would be 63. So 21 is not a factor for 56. So I'm going to check my next largest one, 7. Is 7 a factor of 56? Does 7 fit into 56 perfectly? It does, because 7 times 8 is 56. So 7 is a factor of 21, and 7 is also a factor of 56. And it's the largest one. So my GCF is 7. Okay, so when it said to find a common factor, I actually found the GCF because that will save me time. If I find the greatest common factor, it will be a little bit easier. So now I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by the common factor. So I have 21 over 56, and I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by that common factor. So 21 divided by 7 is 3. 56 divided by 7 is 8. This is my simplest form, and it's equal or equivalent to 21 over 56. It has the same value. This one's just simpler to look at. Okay, let's see another one of those. Okay, this time it's a mixed number, which means they gave me a whole number with a fraction, but I'm going to still follow my same steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the common factor, and it says I'm going to find a common factor. I'm going to make a table for the numerator. So for 10, so 1 times 10, 2 times 5, 3 does not work, 4 does not work, and 5 is a repeat. So I'm going to stop. So my factors of 10 are 1, 2, 5, and 10. So I'm going to see which ones are also factors for 14. I'm going to start at the largest. Is 10 a factor of 14? Does it fit in perfectly? No. Is 5 a factor of 14? No. Is 2 a factor of 14? Yes. So the greatest common factor, the greatest number that fits into both of those perfectly is 2, which means My second step then says we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by the common factor. So I am going to divide those. Now notice I don't divide my whole number. My whole number stays the same. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So my equivalent fraction in simplest form is 2 5/7. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are going to try some of those together now. So please grab your pencil back, and we are on page 6 together. And our first problem says 12/40. So remember, our first step is we need to find a common factor. So let's do a table for our numerator of 12. So we have 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and 4 is a repeat, so we can stop. Okay, so our factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. We want to see what is also a factor for 40. What number also works for 40? So let's start with our largest, 12. Does 12 fit perfectly into 40? No, because 3 times 12 is 36, and 4 times 12 is 48. So 12 won't work. What about 6? Does 6 fit in perfectly to 40? No. What about 4? Yes, because 4 times 10 is 40. So we found our GCF, our greatest common factor between 12 and 40 is 4. Okay, that was step 1. Step 2 is we need to divide our numerator and our denominator by our common factor. So we get 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. So our final step is we wrote an equivalent, because these are equal, fraction in simplest form. Okay, let's try one more together. Okay, this time we have a mixed number again. 1 and 12/15. And again, they gave us the same numerator, which we did above, so that one should be a really fast table to make since we just made one. So we had 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and 4 repeated. Okay, so now we have to check to see which of these factors is also a factor for our denominator. So remember, we're going to start at our largest. So is 12 a factor of 15? Can 12 times something get me 15? No. Is 6 a factor of 15? No. Is 4 a factor of 15? No. Is 3 a factor of 15? Yes, because 3 times 5 is 15. So our GCF is 3. Okay, so step 2 then says we are going to divide our numerator and our denominator by 3. We are not going to do anything to our whole number. So 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So our final step is to make an equivalent fraction, which means these are equal in simplest form. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, your job today is going to be to finish these problems. So you have quite a few to do. You have page 7, page 8, and page 9. Have a nice afternoon.